Did you just struggle to get a cork off?
A little bit.
It's like sometimes your ineptness is just...
It was a first pop.
Golly.
All right, ready to go?
Yeah.
Yep.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Gold Eagle Jake.
And we are joined by Caryn Wells from Green River. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, thank you. Very special guest. Very excited to have you on. We've had you at the store a couple times for your Glencairn experience, and definitely somebody who we wanted to get on the podcast. So thanks for making some time to hop on here with us.
Absolutely. I love coming up to your place. It's always a good time.
Appreciate that. But yeah, you definitely your whole Glencairn experience. We're going to get into all that. But I know you've got a really cool background, and you know a lot about the distillery. You are the national brand ambassador, is that correct? And one of the first brand ambassadors to be hired by Green River.
Yeah, actually, the first brand ambassador.
First.
Yeah, the first. So that's my claim to fame now, I guess, huh?
So what did you do before Green River? How did you get into being the first brand ambassador?
Yeah, I don't think it's that cool, but everybody tells me it is. I was retired. I always say that getting into bourbon and my job now is my third career. My first career, I was a public school teacher for about 12 years, mainly elementary. Taught, fifth grade was my favorite subject, or favorite grade, I should say, to teach, all subjects. And I did that for 12 years in the state of Florida, and then kind of decided that I needed to do something different. So I did a 180, and I had a lot of friends that were in the fire service. So I don't know. I don't think they thought I was going to make it at the time. I was pretty prissy, and but anyway, I went into the fire service, and so I did that for another 10 years. And then I retired as a lieutenant firefighter and a paramedic as well. So that meant I had my own station, my own crew. And I worked for Orange County Fire Rescue. So we were the county that surrounded Orlando, Florida. So a little busy. We ran a few 100,000 calls, but I loved every minute of it. And then I decided to retire in 2013, moved to Kentucky. And this whole bourbon thing, I blame on my now 83-year-old aunt. She got me into this. She wanted to start going to bourbon meetings and didn't want to go by herself. And so I started tagging along with her. And I always tell everybody, bourbon is a journey. You may not like it when you first start drinking it. And when I first started drinking it, it was bourbon and either Mountain Dew, don't judge me, or Sprite or ginger ale. I had to have something else in there to get it past my palate, to start to understand it. And slowly but surely my palate grew and developed, and now I enjoy my bourbon neat. I was sitting in a bourbon meeting one night, and the people I was sitting with worked at the distillery. We were drinking rye whiskey straight out of the barrel, and I loved it. And, as you guys know, rye is a hard thing. It's not something you immediately like. And I told the people, I said, I'm retired. If you guys need a tour guide, I'd love to work here part-time. And about a month later, they called and they go, listen, we know you were tipsy, but were you serious? And I said, oh yeah, I was dead serious. So that's how my whole journey started. I started as a tour guide at our distillery, part-time. And then ultimately in 2022, I was asked if I wanted to be the national brand ambassador. And here I am 3 years later.
I'm not going to blame or say anything about the Mountain Dew and bourbon. That's something I've only done once, and it was about a month ago. One of my guys in a group of friends sent a link to a TikTok or Instagram, must have been Instagram because it's not TikTok, Instagram thing where they're mixing Blanton's with blackberry Mountain Dew. and they're like, "We need to do this tonight," and it was the worst thing I think I've ever had in my life.
Well, to be honest with you, Mountain Dew's origins, it was made as a chaser
Yeah.
for whiskey. So
Yep.
the original, I can't attest to the flavored stuff, but the original Mountain Dew, it actually isn't bad when you're trying to get somebody to like it. I always say
Yeah.
it was a little bit of bourbon and a lot of Mountain Dew, and then it kind of slowly switched to the other way, and it was
Yep.
and then obviously now I don't. When I do have a mixed drink like that, say it was Mountain Dew, it's pretty darn sweet to me now. So
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a very cool background to do something completely out of the bourbon industry. I feel like we don't hear about that too often. Most of the time, it's, growing up in Kentucky or whatever and just coming into it. So, yeah, to go from school teacher to firefighter to national brand ambassador, I think is a really cool journey and not something that you see every day.
yeah, thanks. I feel very privileged, very honored to do that because I realize too the majority of people that are in the bourbon industry have grown up in it, or they, like you just said, they've lived in Kentucky their whole life, or some aspect, maybe their family was in the spirits industry in some way, shape, or form. And so for me to be able to walk in and I won't say just do it because there's a lot of learning, and I always continue to try to learn things, but I'm very passionate about history, very passionate about American history. And, our story is just, it's real. You can touch it. You can feel it. You come to the distillery and you sense it. You feel that whole history. And to me, that's just something that I don't want people to miss out on it. And I don't want it to fade away and become a memory. I want people to know that it's still there and we're vibrant and, since 1885. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition.
I was gonna
and
say.
a perfect. It's perfect that you found Green River because they do have incredible history. I believe they are like the 10th distillery that opened in Kentucky. Why don't you just go ahead and share some of that history and the timeline of Green River?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, our DSP number, our distilled spirits plant number, is DSP KY10. So, yeah, the 10th oldest licensed distillery in the state of Kentucky. Back in the day, the DSP numbers were handed out in order. So, and originally, it was District 2 DSP KY9. And then when they did away with the districts, distilleries that were still functioning got to say, yeah, I'll keep my number or whatnot. And at the time it was 9 was taken. So it was with Bernheim. So they kept that one. And the Medleys who were running the operations at that point, they said, well, that's fine. We'll take 10. So, we can chart that history all the way back. And that's really amazing. But the distillery actually goes back to 1885, which is when it was started. And for 33 years, the Green River brand was dominant and I like to say 3 main things. It was the most widely advertised whiskey in the world. It was the most expensive whiskey ever sold. And then for me, the most important thing is it was the official whiskey of the United States Marine Hospital and Public Health Services. So I think that's pretty darn cool, Pre-prohibition, you'd go to the doctor and you'd get a script for medicinal whiskey. And the medicinal whiskey had to be bottled in bond. You had to know that you weren't going to drink it and die.
Yeah.
Rectifiers were doing a lot of dirty things back then. And so to be awarded that contract and then to hold it for the next 18 years, I think that's a testament to the quality of Green River and the whiskey back then, and just to the whole presence of the brand throughout not just the United States but the world. I mean, it literally was all over the world.
Well, I'm glad that it's no longer the most expensive whiskey in the world.
Yeah, so that story, this is back in the gold rush. So 20 barrels of Green River were traded for shares of a Colorado gold mine called the Forest Queen. And the Forest Queen had 2 locations. It had a lead mine and then it had the gold mine. And the gold mine panned out. And that made Green River the most expensive whiskey ever sold. So I think that's pretty cool, when you look at it like that. Yeah, it was good marketing. John McCulloch, who started Green River, he was pretty darn good at his job for doing that. Pre-prohibition, also the slogan was "the whiskey without a headache." So that was kind of almost went hand in hand with it being a medicinal whiskey, if you want to look at it like that, you know. So I think that's kind of fun too.
I think the people that always say that like this doesn't give you a hangover or this doesn't give you a headache just haven't had enough fun with that bottle to get to the headache or hangover part. Like I feel like they've always like tapped out a little too soon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, you gotta play your cards right on that one.
So what's been so I like the distillery's been around forever, but it's come and gone. Probably about the last 5 years, you guys have had like a big spread going throughout the states because only within the last few years have we been able to get it here in Illinois. What's been the spread of going out from mainly just Kentucky to pushing out to other states, and where are you guys all at right now?
And maybe
Yeah,
even, oh, sorry, maybe even before that, what happened? Because people are going to ask, what happened to Green River? Why did it leave the market and
yeah,
then come back?
yeah, sure. So everything was going. We'll go back to the 1800s, 1900s. So everything was going along good for Green River. In 1918, it was a Saturday night, and in August in 1918, a trash fire took out the entire distillery in 3 hours. That was about 45,000 barrels of whiskey. Estimated value back then was like $3 million. Today's value would put it closer to 40 or $50 million.
Yeah.
And that was right before Prohibition started in 1920. So, you know, the distillery got rebuilt before Prohibition actually went into effect, but it never reopened. And because Prohibition, when it happened, only 5 distilleries were allowed to stay open, and that was for medicinal purposes. And Green River wasn't one of them. Now, had it not burned, it possibly could have been, but because it, you know, hadn't been in operation. So, in 27, John McCulloch died. 1927, he died. So he didn't live through Prohibition to actually get things going again after Prohibition. And the brand in 33, when Prohibition was over, the brand got sold. And so it left, you know, it left the facility where it was at, and it never really came back to its former state of glory. They tried to do it. It actually got sold a couple of different times, but it never really came back to the prominence that it once had. But the distillery itself, it got reopened, and it was under ownership of the Medley families for the next 60 years. And the Medleys are local to Owensboro. And I always, you know, tell people during the time that the Medleys ran the operations there, they produced products like Ezra Brooks and Mellow Corn, Medley Brothers, Five Brothers. That was all produced right there in Owensboro at the distillery. But they too shut things down in the late 80s, early 90s. And when they shut down, they sold off the label of Ezra Brooks, and they sold off the label of Mellow Corn. And so, you know, obviously, Lux Row and Heaven Hill have those now. And so, you know, that, and then that whole distillery just kind of shuttered again for another 20 years until in 2014, some investors got it back up and running. So, going back to your question of what, you know, where did we come from and, you know, where are we at now? We started producing in 2016, started laying down barrels then, and when we originally started, we didn't have the name of Green River. That was being held by the great grandson of John McCulloch. So we had to work with him to get the naming rights back. And in September of 2020, we did. And we brought Green River back home after, 120 some years of it being absent from its original property, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You know, the Kentucky Distillers Association, Eric Gregory, he called it hallowed ground. And we truly are, because that property has only been a distillery the entire time that it's been in existence. So to bring the original name back to the original location is a really cool thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So we were ready to launch in 2020, which of course is when COVID was. So we couldn't get bottles. And then when we got bottles, we couldn't get labels. And it just kind of, you can see the snowball effect happening there. So we decided to wait till 2022. So we launched Green River, our flagship, the Black Label, the High Rye Bourbon. We launched that on February 10th of 2022. And when we did that, we were in 4 states. We were in Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, and Missouri. So that's where we launched the first year. We went into all 4 of those states. And then in July of 22, the same year, we joined ranks with Bardstown Bourbon Company, and became a part of that whole entity. Still two separate distilleries, but because Bardstown was already distributed in other states, that gave us the luxury of being able to go into those states as well. So we went from being in 4 states to being in 24 states
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of months. And it wasn't a problem for us because we have plenty of product. So we weren't, strapped, and we didn't have to say, oh, we can't do that because we don't have enough. We did have enough. And that was 22. And now this year, as of right now, we're in 45 states. So we're just keep growing and adding, and it's been fun. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Green River is not a craft distillery in terms of your output, right?
Yeah, we don't, when you look at the Kentucky Bourbon Trail standards on things, there was the heritage side, and then there was the craft side. And by standards in there, if you were craft, if you were 50,000 barrels or less a year, and if you were over 50,000, you were heritage. Well, we've been on the heritage trail ever since we got on it. Just most people didn't know about us, and until you come and see the campus and then see what we're doing, it's a name that you haven't heard of very often, or as much as some of the others. But yeah, we're not a little guy anymore. We do a lot of contract distillation, and currently I think we're sitting on over 500,000 barrels, about 525,000 barrels aging right now. So it's fun.
Yes,
It's fun
no
times.
product shortages in the future, hopefully.
No, we don't, and I always tell people we really shouldn't ever get the term allocated put on our product, because the only reason that you're not getting it is if you're not ordering it, or your store isn't ordering it, or our distributor isn't ordering it enough. It's not that we don't have enough to give. It's, what do they have in supply?
Yeah, I do like how you mentioned that at our master class, and we're proud of it. Like
Yeah.
we don't need to create hype or scarcity. Like we're open to the fact that we have a lot of product. We're a big distillery. I would have to think that delaying it 2 years when COVID hit maybe helped a little bit. Just really get you guys to a point where you had enough stock. I don't know. Maybe you were ready either way, but to go from 4 states to 48 states, is that what you said?
We're
Is
40. We're 45 states right now.
45,
Yeah, 45
which
states right
is
now.
incredible. And I can speak to the volume we did when you guys first came into the state. It was like we were having a hard time keeping it in stock, but replenishes kept coming and coming and coming. So it made a huge wave when you guys first came to Illinois.
Yeah, it is. I think when, of course, social media always helps with everything, and doing, podcasts like what you guys have, and others out there, it makes a big difference because, as a consumer, you don't know what you're looking at. You see another label on a bottle. So it's really important to get the story out there. But I think more importantly, what we've done as a brand is not only have we revived a true authentic brand from the 1800s, it's really good bourbon,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really reasonably priced. We want people to drink it. We don't want people to look at it and go, maybe not. And, for $100, I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but for $35, sure, I'll give it a try. And that was our goal is what's the point of making something if people are just going to look at it on a shelf?
Yeah.
Let's get people to drink it and enjoy it, and keep the product consistent. And I think we've done a very good job at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first ever run in with Green River was a former coworker of mine. She always goes down to Kentucky, and she would, anytime she found out someone was going down to Kentucky, she's like, "Please grab me a bottle of Green River when you're down there. You can't get it here." So we had always, anyone going down there would always bring her bottle, and she'd always open it right on the spot just to have some more of it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, my first thought of it was, this is pretty darn good, because there's been other heritage distilleries that have come back that haven't come out of the gates with such a strong bourbon product. And it was one of those that right from the bat, because it came out when we were a year or so into the podcast here. And it was always one of the ones that whenever we talk about $30 to $40 price range, that Green River better be on that list and get it. But it's phenomenal because it came out so strong and the flavor is very, very wonderful on this. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of it. I mean, the Black Label was the flagship. That's the first one we came out with. So the 70 corn, 21 rye, 9 malt at 90 proof, and nice, just nice, easy sipper. It's got a lot of great flavor to it. You get some of the rye spice on it, but it's not all up in your business. As I like telling people, you can really pull out a lot of the caramels and the toffees that are in it. That are hidden down in it, but I think it's really sweet on the nose. And something else that we did that was unique was, the wheated bourbon that we came out with is the same exact recipe, except for switching the flavoring grain. So it's 70 corn, 21% wheat, 9% malted barley. So I always like to tell people, when you have somebody that isn't sure, do they like a wheated bourbon? Do they like a high rye bourbon? Well, you can, sell them both bottles, or tell them to go get both bottles and compare it yourself. They're literally identical mash bills. So just that flavoring grain switched.
same yeast and everything across the.
Yep.
Okay.
Same yeast strain. Yeah. Yeah. And the same thing that I talk about in my experience too, is the rye. We make a 95.5 rye. Now MGP made that really popular, when they started producing it, and it's really good. But we too laid down 95% rye, 5% malted barley. The difference is that by using the same yeast strain that we did with our bourbon, both our wheated bourbon and our high rye bourbon, I call it a bourbon lover's rye, because you're getting some of that same sweetness that you would pick up in a bourbon, but it carries through with the rye, so you get more of the baking spice finishes on the rye versus all the pepper, and it's a really good, easy drinking 95.5 rye, and at 95 proof too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the rye, and it is definitely lacking in some of the more offensive rye flavor notes that turn people off, to the category. So
Yeah.
it is a really nice intro rye, for people
Yeah.
who are on the fence.
It is. It's kind of like a gateway rye, if you
Yeah.
want to say it like that, But it's just not all up in your business, and you can start to understand now. I think some of the hard things to understand about rye is that it's very drying to the palate, and it's very earthy tasting, and that's enough to change when you're coming off a bourbon where it's so sweet and it's so viscous, and it's really coats your palate well and leaves those nice yummy flavors in your mouth. When you get into the ryes, it takes that away for a minute, but most 95.5 ryes are so heavy on the pepper finish that you can't enjoy the undertones of the rye right off the bat. So that's why I think ours is a great starter rye. And Jake, as we lined price everything on those first three. So your high rye bourbon, your wheated bourbon, and then your rye whiskey are all the same SRP price on it, and which is unusual because rye is just a more expensive grain for us as distillers. So typically you see that relayed back to the consumer as well.
That and quite a bit lower yields on the rye side.
It is quite a bit lower yields, and it's a real pain in the butt to work with too. It's a sticky grain.
Yeah, it
A
was
lot more
definitely-
cleaning. A lot more cleaning involved with the rye.
Yeah.
A lot.
I was just going to add in, it was definitely a huge hit when you came and did the master class. We had a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't normally like rye, but this rye I could sip on," and it is very friendly for a 95.5 rye. You don't see that too often. A lot of times they're just too much on the spice or too much on the dill or whatever. But very balanced, very easily drinkable, and very affordable. Going back to how all the whiskeys are line priced, I think we have them all for $33.99, and that was not something that we've seen in the last couple of years with new brands coming to the market. A lot of new brands came into the market with that $60, $70, $80 price point, needing to recoup some of their investment. But I think that's just another reason why you guys were so successful right out the gate, is it was at a price where everyone can grab a bottle and try it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and I always say too, of course, this past year we came out with Full Proof. We came out with that in June of last year, 2024. And the Full Proof being that 117.3 proof on that. what to me the best aspect about Green River and our we call that our core four is that for basically around $160 you can start your entire bourbon journey as you get your wheated bourbon, you get your high rye bourbon, you get your rye whiskey, and then you get a higher proof. And when you put all of that together, it really kind of walks you through your whole journey, and then you branch out from there. I mean, I think it's a great way to get people started on it. But that foolproof, man, it is off the charts. That's one of my favorite things. I've got a pour of it right here because it's just so sweet. There's so many things going on in it, but it does not drink like it's 117.3 proof at all.
I was doing a little bit of a pairing with a Reese's Easter egg.
Oh, how's that working for you?
Pretty good. Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's nice.
Yeah.
Trying
I can see
to
that.
recreate the masterclass a little bit here in my office, but
yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. On the mash bills, is the ones you guys using now, is there any throwback to the mash bills that were used back when Green River started, or did they decide to go different style with that?
Yeah, man, I wish we could. I mean, we haven't yet. I will say that much. The mash bills that we're currently using are ones that were started by our first master distiller, and so we just stuck with those. The original ones, there was no written documentation that I'm aware of the original mash bills for it, and I have to say that goes back to that 1918 fire. I mean, literally everything burned.
Everything.
They saved, I think they saved 141 barrels from that fire. So that being said, we do have some old bottles of Green River. We have some 1912. I think we've got a 1918. We may even have some that are a little younger. So we could draw a sample from those. We could, but we also get caught between a rock and a hard place because back then everything was pretty much made out of cork. These are completely sealed bottles. So if we tap into that cork, now we've introduced oxygen. So now we've taken away the value of that bottle.
Yeah.
But we pull our chemists are chomping at the bit to try and find out that original recipe. But most of them back then, were whiskey, obviously, and they used a lot of grain neutral spirits in their mash bills as well. So it very well could be good. And I'm sure at one point we probably will, but right now we haven't. So these are all new mash bills to the Green River story.
So right now there's 4 everyday on the shelf SKUs.
Yep.
Is there any plan to do any kind of like limited release annually or semi-annually or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So we have single barrels, obviously. So those are I guess you could kind of throw those into an LTO category, simply because we do. Let's see, we started out with 200 of the high rye bourbon single barrels last year, and then this year it's 300 of those, and we're also introducing this year single barrel wheated bourbon. But those are extremely limited. There's only 100 barrels of those for the entire United States. So that's something that if that's your jam and you want to get one, those will be a hot commodity on that. I'm sure that we will add to our lineup as we go along. Everybody's asked me right now. The biggest question I get when I'm out and about is when's the foolproof wheated coming? Or when is a single barrel rye coming? And I always remind people we didn't lay down as much of that when we first started. So our main mash bill was a 70 corn, 21 rye, 9 malt, and that's what we mainly ran when we first started. And we didn't really get into the aggressive with the wheated or the rye until end of 2017, 2018 when we really started laying down more of that. So before we go putting a new product out on the market, we've got to make sure we got enough of what we have to sustain now 45 states. So I know something else will be coming. I'm sure of it. I just don't know when and which one it would be first. I could take some guesses, but that wouldn't be fair to everybody.
I'd love to try a foolproof rye.
Oh, yeah.
That's just me. I'm I'm probably the biggest rye fan out of the three of us. So
Any of them.
Yeah, well, to add on to the barrel picks, Gold Eagle does have a high rye bourbon barrel pick coming. That is really, really good. I remember wanting to pick 2 out of the 3 samples for single barrels, which doesn't happen often. And we were told we would get wheated samples, and they're on the way. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that
Wow.
happens, and we get the weeded samples as well. Because I
That's
think,
huge.
yeah, and I've had other single barrels picked by other places, and I've never had one that has let me down. They've all been absolutely phenomenal for their price point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a testament to our single barrel program itself. We have one guy at Green River and we have one guy at Bardstown that handle the single barrels. And I know that Wes James, who handles our single barrels at Green River, he has a huge task in front of him because our standards are pretty tough. He pulls samples from every barrel that's eligible to be in the program, but then it gets tested by some assortment of Wes, Aaron Harris, our head distiller, and myself, some combination of us, we will test all the barrels and make sure that it's good. And if we don't like it, then it doesn't even go in the program. We'll save it for a later date or we'll save it to do blending with or whatever. But, we want people to have a nice variety and a nice pick. We expect you to rule out one barrel right off the bat, and then we hope that you struggle with the next 3. That's our goal, is that you have a tough time of it, and they've been good so far. I get really lucky because I'm not there for all of the single barrel picks, but when I'm out in market, if somebody has a single barrel, I'm sure to try it, and boy, they're all over the place and they are great. They are just fantastic.
So
Can't wait.
on the history and the story and things about Green River, one of the more unique things about the product itself is the horseshoe shape of the bottle.
The bottle, yeah.
So there's probably a lot of people that don't know too much about the horseshoe shape, which, by the way, it is the most comfortable bottle to pick up. In your
Right.
hand.
It does
Because
fit in your
it
hand
fits-
really nice,
it
doesn't
fits in
it?
your hand perfect because your thumb is not a circle.
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
pointed that way. But
It,
what came around with the horseshoe shape for
yes.
the bottle?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, the brand is so iconic that we needed to honor the history of it within the bottle. That was the whole goal. So we say that the bottle it's history in a bottle. The horseshoe shape comes from the original logo. If you go back and you look at old pictures of the original Green River whiskey, it was a standard bottle, back in the day, just your normal, what I call a 1 liter bottle. But it had a horseshoe on the front, always a sign of good luck. We just assumed that that's what McCulloch put on there because it was a sign of good luck back then and still is now. So that is where the shape came from. Then if you feel on the top of the bottle, all around the top ridge of it, it's all bumpy. That's to emulate the rivets that went around the horseshoe. We put the faux tack stamp on it and the picture of the Green River on the very top of it, honoring that original location where it was started. So there's just so much, yeah, right there. So you can do that better than I can. I could not do that. I'd be all over the place. And then, we embossed the words Owensboro on the front, established 1885. And then on the back, we embossed DSPKY10 down at the bottom. Right there. Yeah, look at that. All of that to honor, again, back in the day, things were embossed on glass, and we don't see that as much anymore. So again, a nod to the history and that time, that era back then. And then on the front, right up underneath, it says the Pride of Owensboro. And we're really proud of that. Back in the day, Owensboro was the mecca for distilleries. There were 50 active distilleries back then. We were bigger than the Frankfurts and the Louisvilles and the Bardstowns. So it was really important for us to honor that whole tradition of what Owensboro used to produce. And then we boldly put on the front DSPKY10 because we want people to understand this is an old iconic brand. And it's important to not forget the history and to honor everything that was done prior to with the brand, that made it to where it is. Now, the happy caveat to that was that because of that horseshoe shape, there's that rise in the front of the bottle. And that rise, we knew it was there. You didn't think about it. But that is where we now find that we get a drinking game. So you can slide a quarter, or if you're lucky to be around the distillery or near me, if you come to events and stuff, we have special coins now that we give out. And a coin will slide right up underneath the bottle. We affectionately call that now "shoot the shoe." So you can have a really nice bourbon and enjoy a little drinking game while you're sitting there with your friends reminiscing. Yeah,
Oh, the official coin.
the official
Someone
coin.
was prepared.
Look at that. Yeah, you are Johnny on it. That's awesome.
Now let's
gotta
see you
have
flick
one
the
thing.
coin under the horseshoe. First
right.
try.
No, this is not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Let's see.
Oh, sure.
Have confidence.
Yeah, he dropped it off the table. Like,
What was that, like 6 inches?
yeah. Yeah.
There you
Hey.
go. There you go.
There we
Third
go.
try after it fell off the table the first time. Not
There
bad.
you go. That's awesome.
I'm on 1.5 pours, so
Hey, at least he's trying.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, you got to try. You got to try. So, we didn't really, we found out about the game after we launched, the night after we launched, to be honest with you. But we were kind of scared to say anything. We didn't want people to think we were coming out with a gimmicky bourbon. We didn't want to ruin the history and the tradition that was with us. So we kind of laid low on it. We didn't really talk much about it the first year. We might show people here and there, but never really did any big advertising on it. And now people understand this is a really good bourbon at a really reasonable price. The history is astounding. You can come to the distillery and see it and feel it for yourself. And so now we have fun with it, and we have games, we have boards that we set up, and just have some fun with it. We just call it "shoot the shoe."
Yeah, the value of the bourbon is very high on this, and that's like I said, it's been one where I've had a lot of people that have been getting into whiskey and they want to try something different, and instead of the normal, like the Elijah Craig's and things like that, I'm always, hey, try something different. Go with Green River for the $30-$35. Like the value is great on that, and like we said earlier, like coming to market at that price was huge, because you got a lot of people just to hop on it because it's on that lower price of what you can get a lot of bourbon for these days, but you're not getting the flavor, the quality that you get out of a lot of the ones that go for $50, $60, $70 that came out roughly the same time.
Well, and the good thing is even not everybody starts off drinking bourbon neat. I mean, let's face it. It's baby stepping it, and if you're drinking it neat, you're sucking it down and telling your friends you enjoy it, and you really don't know what you're getting. You're just trying to make a good impression. But they mix well too. Any one of them mixes great. You can make it into an old fashioned, or my favorite's always an espresso martini. If I'm out, or whiskey sours, they all work well, and they all have their strong suits. If you're going for the fruitier drink, you go with a wheated. If you want something with a little more kick, you go with a rye. There's you can have a happy medium on any of it, but they drink neat great, they drink on the rocks great, and they drink in a mixed drink fabulously. So
yeah, I do want to point out how flavorful the 3 standard mash bills are compared to others in that proof point range. They're it's like night and day obvious that these are much more flavorful than a lot of the competition in that area.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think there's a couple things that factor into that. 90 proof is a great starting place for it. You go too much lower and you're going to lose. It's going to, in my opinion, it gets a little weak on the side of things. You have to have a much stronger grain flavor coming through in order to hold up at a lower proof. And I think that's important for people to understand. There's nothing wrong with lower proof whiskeys or bourbons. You just need to figure out what works on your palate and what, what you like. I won't say a lot of people, but people were saying, well, I'd like Green River more if it was a higher proof. And it's like, yeah, that's great. That's fine. But, also understand we can't come out of the gate right off the bat at 100 proof or 110 proof, because then you got to know where to go. You have to come out with your baseline products and then you build on it, and I think we've done a really solid job of being able to do that and give the community great starter bourbons, great everyday sippers, ones that you can drink the whole bottle and not feel guilty about, and that you just spent, 50, 60, $100 on a bottle, and you can go back and the quality's still there. And at 5 years old, those are three, the high rye bourbon, the wheated bourbon, and the rye whiskey are all 5-year-old flavor profiles. And I think that makes a difference too. Again, nothing wrong with a 4-year-old bourbon, but just that extra year gives it a little bit more oomph in it, and that allows us to have a nice full flavor on it.
Yeah, I mean, even I think are we all drinking the full proof? I think.
I am, yeah.
But I mean, the proof point on it is like spot on, perfect. I think.
On the full proof.
Yeah, I mean, Dan talks a lot about how your favorite range is that like 110 to 115 kind of zone. This is 117.3.
117.3.
Yeah,
It's a little
like
bit on the
107.
high end of that range, but it doesn't drink that way. It doesn't drink hot. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Very flavorful.
Yeah, I think that's that's the other thing. You can work your way up to it, and not be afraid that it's going to be too much for you. I think that's what surprises people. They hear I don't always like telling people when I'm doing my experience. I don't always like telling everybody what the proof is that they're drinking, because it predetermines in your mind, oh gosh, this is going to be hot. And that's not always the case on everything. So, but once they start drinking it and they realize, wow, this has a lot of flavor to it. It's not hurting me. And I think that's a big thing too, that you can just sip on it. Now, everybody always asks me, what are you drinking? When you come home, what do you have a drink? Well, if I'm only going to have one drink, then I'm going to have a full proof drink. If it's earlier and I'm going to have a couple of drinks, then I'll drink the 90 proof, because I can have a couple of those and enjoy it. If I have one or two of the full proof, it's going to be an early night.
Yeah, but you sleep after
depending on how heavy the pour is.
Yeah, two full proofs is a good sleeping setup. So
That's right. That's right.
You're not gonna have. I mean, you're not gonna have, like you say, not gonna have the headache after 2 drinks of the 117. You're gonna get a nice night's sleep. That's what I'm going for tonight. But I mean, even at the 90 proof, there's still complexity to it. Like you were talking about with some of the ones that are below 90, and it just kind of tastes weak. Like you don't get the different flavors to come out. You get a little bit of the whiskey flavor and a little bit of water. At the 90 proof, it is great. Like I said, at 117, when you guys first started releasing the full proof, I was excited because it's close to my range, and I mean, Jake, I know you guys have blinded Green River a lot in blinds out there. Have you ever guys put this against any other well-known full proofs that might be a different mash bill with wheat instead of rye?
I think maybe we're waiting for the wheated full proof to do that.
Okay, I was gonna say, but even with the rye, I think it would knock it off.
We did I think the famous blind with Green River that we did is we put the regular rye bourbon when it first came out up against regular Buffalo Trace. And this was with the Lake County Whiskey Club, and majority of the room preferred the Green River, which is very cool to see. And, because Buffalo Trace, we still are having a hard time keeping in stock, and everyone thinks of it as the best of all best 90 proof whiskeys. But I think tasting the Green River next to the Buffalo Trace side by side, they're very similar. There's just more complexity and a longer finish on the Green River. And that is my honest take about tasting these two right next to each other. They are very similar. So anytime somebody comes in, asks for Buffalo Trace and we don't have it, first thing that pops into my head is let's show them this Green River rye bourbon.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's important to do the blinds, and Jake, I'm glad to know that you do that, and I tell that to everybody all the time. If you're not sure what your palate likes, then blind. Have somebody pour you blind and let your palate decide, because we are so accustomed to going with the flow. Well, everybody likes this one, so I better like this one, and I better pick this one because that's what my buddy likes, instead of just saying, you know what, this is what I like on tonight, on this day and time. This is the pour that I like, and it can change. it can change from day to day. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what makes us human. So
Yeah, sometimes Dan likes rice. Most of the time he doesn't.
But when he does, it's in a blind.
Yeah.
isn't it?
No, it's as long as it's not dill flavored or dusty rye or heavy pepper, I'm fine. Give me a little minty, grassy rye, and I'm pretty good there. But
Yeah,
that's my rye zone.
I tend to drink rye more in the wintertime. That's where I find myself. Summertime I'm gonna switch into the high rye bourbon and the wheated. And then I tend to like the rye whiskeys more in the wintertime. But that's just me. There's there's no right or wrong.
I get a lot of shit because I don't enjoy a lot of ryes. But my favorite bourbon is the 20 to 35% high rye bourbon. Like, I think the sweet with a decent amount of that rye in it. Like, if it's 10-15%, it's not enough to give it enough punch. But when you're sitting at a high rye mash bill, you get a little bit. I mean, it really changes the finish on it compared to what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where the biggest notice is on the finish.
Remember, I think I did this when I was there at the store. Is that wheated bourbons aren't always smoother on somebody's palates. So a lot of people can say that the wheated has more heat to it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just everybody's palate. So I think sometimes when we get drinking bourbon, we naturally say, well, you're going to get more spice on the rye. But I always try to catch myself and say, but some palates are different. So don't be surprised if this seems smoother to you, because it very well could be. There's no right or wrong, because I mean, I cringe when people say they don't like chocolate. How could you not like chocolate? But it just isn't their palate, so lucky for them, I guess.
So,
if anyone's looking for a summer drink with rye, rye whiskey smash is absolutely fantastic with lemon, mint, and simple syrup and rye whiskey. It's fantastic.
You got a breakdown of that
good.
one? Yeah.
I can put it up. We'll put it on Instagram.
Yeah, that's a I like the Gold Rush in the summertime. We do one called the Rye Wait, and that one's really good. It's with rye whiskey, pineapple juice, lemonade, and a splash of ginger beer. And that's really good too. It's very refreshing. I always tell people you gotta be careful on that one. You can suck those things down and not realize you're drinking rye whiskey. It kind of catches up with you a little later. And you're like, uh-oh. But it's fun.
So, Caryn, going back to chocolate and flavors and palates, you have come up with this tasting experience called the Caryn experience, spelled Caryn, of course.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah. I see what you did there, Caryn.
You've come and done this now twice at the store, both times a little different. So you expanded on it since the first time, but we've had a lot of really, really awesome presentations and people come to the store for these masterclass events, and I've never had more people probably ask to bring you back to do another sensory tasting.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you come up with this? And I know it's not doing it justice because we don't have the sensory items and the listeners don't have the sensory items. But can you kind of walk us through that experience and how you came up with it?
Yeah, so, well, I was tasked by our vice president of marketing about 3 years ago to come up with a sensory tasting experience that I could take a traveling roadshow. And so, I was like, geez, what am I going to do? And so I started taking the pours, and just, looking at the tasting notes that were being given to us by Dan Calloway and whatnot, and saying, okay, boy, am I getting this? Am I not getting this? Because again, everybody's palate's different. And then I started just, it was kind of rough for about a week or so, because I had every kind of spice and every kind of, whether it was sweets or anything like that. And I just started pairing them together. Did I get this? Did I get this smell out of it? Did I get this flavor out of it? And I started pairing everything up and going, these are the two that work with the wheated, and okay, now let's get to the high rye and what works with the high rye. And really, that's what I did. It was a trial and error as far as what works, because as I point out on our wheated bourbon, it picks up a lot of stone fruit aromas on the nose, and apricot is one of the strongest ones that I get when I'm nosing our wheated bourbon. So I was like, this is great. I can use dried apricots. But when I paired it with dried apricots, it didn't pull out the flavors that I was thinking that it would. But another stone fruit was the dried cherry. And the dried cherry just went ballistic with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. So, it was trial and error for a lot of it. So once I got all of the pairings worked out with everything, then it was, what are we going to call it? And I was struggling, and our my VP, Jim Lake, he said, why don't you call it the Glencairn experience? And I'm like, well, that'll never fly. The Glencairn company will, they're surely they'll give me a cease and desist. And Martin Duffy, he works for Glencairn North America. He's a super great guy. I love him to death. And he came to one of my experiences and he goes, I love it. And he sent it back to his guys over in Scotland, and they've not said anything. But of course, we use the Glencairn because this is the best thing to actually nose whiskey with. That's how I came up with it. So have fun, a little play on words, and we keep going. And then this year, I had to add the rye, and that was fun. Coming up with the rye, what are you going to pair with rye? It's so different. So when I hit it, the orange was the hardest thing to figure out. How am I going to get that orange? And it's really an orange zest flavor that you get out of it. Orange marmalade. That was the key right there. So it's amazing to take the honeyed graham teddy bears and the orange marmalade. It just kind of blows everybody's mind. And of course, I say this, I would say 95% of the people that come and experience my sensory tasting, everything works for them. But there's always that 5% that one or two of those things don't mesh well with their palates. And that's okay. Because again, everybody's palate's different, but for the majority of people, this is what we get. There's never going to be a sensory experience that's perfect for every single person. But, if you can get the majority of them, then that's what we're going for.
Would you call that 5% the Glencairn Karens?
Well, I'm pretty careful on that because I don't want to.
Different
I
Karen
already had a
spelling.
hard enough time in 2020 having the name Caryn, so I don't need to push my luck on anything.
Different spelling though. Different spelling.
Yeah. Thank goodness my mom was way ahead of her time when she named me. I didn't have to change the spelling or change my name, so that was a good thing.
Well, Caryn, I mean, it's hard to see how you went from tour guide to national brand ambassador, because I would think you would have to have a lot of passion about the company and about the product to be able to do that. And I just don't feel it. That's me being a sarcastic ass. So you don't know me very well. I'm a huge sarcastic ass. It's amazing to see, like, if you're a normal listener, at this point, go back and rewatch the video, because to see her smile, to see her passion that she has for Green River and for the product is phenomenal. Like, there's so many times we've had different ambassadors come out that you don't see this level of enthusiasm coming through, and it's been amazing to see, Caryn. It's a great story for you. I'm really glad that you're with us tonight, because I've been sitting here drinking about it. We've all been fans of Green River for a long time, and it's growing on me even more now, just having listened to you. So, well,
thanks. I appreciate that. I as I said earlier, I love our brand. I love our story. And most importantly, I love history, and American history is important to me, and I don't ever want to lose it. And so I think, for the bourbon person out there that's just getting into bourbon, or you've been into bourbon for a long time, to be able to feel a sense of ownership, I think that's what we can give on the Green River side. You come to the distillery, and we treat you like family, and we're not commercialized. I mean, yeah, we're on the bourbon trail, and yeah, we have all these things going on. We work 7 days a week, so it's a full on distillery, but we understand that when you come and take time to come see us, we want you to feel the passion that we have for our brand too. And I think that's what's important. So I'm just happy that they let me go out and do this and meet great people and have a lot of fun. And, if I can get one person to go, aha, I get it, that I've done my job, and that's what's important. I think that's the teacher in me. I like seeing the light click on for people. So
We can feel it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have like maybe a couple like quick questions just about Green River. I
Lightning
hear
round. Let's go.
Yeah, lightning round. I hear all the time about how awesome Green River's contract distillation setup is. But unlike Bardstown Bourbon Company, you walk into Bardstown Bourbon Company, and this could be true with Green River, and we don't know it. But you walk into Bardstown, they show you a lot of the brands that they contract distill for. I'm not sure if I know any brands that are being contract distilled by Green River, or is that because they just haven't come to market yet? Or
yeah,
what
no,
can you
no.
tell us about that side of the business?
Yeah, sure. So contract distillation for us at Green River is about 75% of what we do. So it's quite a bit. Yeah. So we do stuff, a lot of things we have NDAs on, so we can't really talk about. But there's a lot of them out there that boldly say, that they get their stuff from us. We do work for OH Ingram. They get some stuff from us. Row 94, that's Dirk Bentley's new venture. We make his stuff, and he proudly puts on their DSPKY10. He loves Owensboro. He had roots in bluegrass music, and Owensboro is the bluegrass capital of the world. We have the International Bluegrass Museum and Hall of Fame, so he likes to come there, and he just feels at home when he comes there. We do also do work for Specs and Total Wine and ABC liquor stores and stuff like that. So they might have their own private brand, and we will do work for them. I always tell people there's a lot of things that we can't say, who we make stuff for, but usually that it will say on the bottle where it's made, and if it says DSPKY10, then that's us. Or if it says Owensboro, Kentucky, we're the only distillery there. So there's only one place that you can go. So that's how we do it. We do a lot of contract work. I'm not gonna lie, we do. So it's a fun time to be in it, and the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned.
If you're doing 70% contract distilling and have enough to keep 4 permanent SKUs on the shelves, that's pretty impressive.
In 45 states.
Yeah, we have 27 rick houses, and we're currently storing, like I said, about a little over 500,000 barrels. So we are not short of anything right now. So we're looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And we've been doing at least 90,000 barrels a year since about 2019. So we're sitting good. Jake, did I answer your question?
You did, yeah. I just, so many people have mentioned like how you guys are well set up for contract distilling, and I just feel like I really haven't seen many brands come out with KSP or DSP 10 outside of Green River. So,
well, see, a lot of them a lot of them won't tell you that. They won't put it on their bottle. If it's their own private label, they may not do that because they're wanting you to, like what they have or whatnot. We don't hide anything that we're doing. But again, on a contract side of things, some people, we have NDAs, so we can't say anything. But yeah, or ask them. If they don't have a distillery, they've got to be getting it from someplace.
Right.
And if it's Kentucky, if they're putting Kentucky on the label, then it's got to come from a Kentucky distillery. So
yeah, it totally makes sense, and I guess it totally makes sense that you mentioned a few big store chains, and of course we're not going to see their products, or I'm not going to see their products. So
right, exactly, yep.
You have more lightning questions, or is that
I was
it?
going to say, that's lightning round.
I was going to let you guys have a turn, but I have one more that maybe isn't as quick as we thought. I don't know. When you were at our masterclass near the end, you briefly mentioned your thoughts on the tariffs and the current market state without going too deep into it or too political. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you think is going on there?
Don't go political. I'll get in trouble if you go political.
Well, I won't anyway. It's not affecting us as we stand right now. I can't say what the future holds on any of that. I can say that the European market is an entity that most distilleries haven't really tapped into yet. So, whether it be something that they work out and it doesn't affect the alcohol sales, who knows? But I mean, as it is right now, we're distributed in Australia and we're distributed in the UK. And even before the tariffs went into effect, the new tariffs went into effect, those countries were paying an astronomical amount. They had more taxes and everything on alcohol to begin with. So from our perspective, it's not hurting us right now. Now, I can't speak for other brands that do have a large portion of stuff going overseas. That obviously could affect them more. But for us and our brands right now of Green River and Bardstown Bourbon Company, it's not hurting us right now. So we aren't, that is not, that's not a focal point for us to have to worry about.
And outside of tariffs, do you see the bourbon hype slowing down at all? I know there's a lot of distilleries that are saying they're going to have too much whiskey because they ramped up production the last couple of years. What have you seen on that? And is Green River impacted by any of that?
Yeah, so for our brand, no, we're fine. Our brand is still growing, and as I said, we just the beginning of this year we were in 38 states, and we're in 45 now. And so, to be able to supply all of those states with everything that they need, we're doing fine. We aren't having any issues. I mean, there's always going to be struggles in a financial. What do you want to say of just a financial hold right now, where everybody's just kind of backing off on everything. You just have to think logically on that stuff and not overspend and but at the same time, don't over project anything either. So we're just going to hold the course and keep doing what we're doing. We feel with our price point, then the quality of product and the fact that we aren't limited on having allocations on anything that will be just fine. And right now we're not struggling with anything, so that's a good thing. That's where we want to keep it.
I was going to say $35 is kind of a recession-proof price point. So
Yeah. I mean, well, again, I go back to you can drink the bottle and not feel guilty about it. If that's your one vice and you go home and you have a pour at the end of the night or you have a pour once a week or something, you don't have to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I just paid $100 and whatever. And, we just want people to enjoy it and know that it's always going to be there.
Yeah, or if you have to share it with a crappy friend like Dan, you don't feel too guilty.
Poor Dan.
The problem's going to be is, Jake, I'm going to have to come buy another bottle because, unfortunately, one of the 5 states that you guys aren't in is one that I'll be living in soon. So I don't want to move a ton of whiskey, but instead of having to drive an hour and a half to Nevada, I might just take a couple bottles extra with me.
Where are you at? Where are you going?
I'm currently in Illinois, but I'll be in Utah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm screwed.
Well, hopefully that rye barrel pick comes in. You can bring one of those.
Oh, I was just going to do another high rye full proof.
Well,
bourbon.
rye bourbon.
Yeah, high rye bourbon.
Yeah.
But, Jake, one thing we haven't done in a while, and I'm going to put you on the spot on this, is a coupon code.
Dan, I had one ready to go.
Good. All right. And also, this doesn't need to be on the coupon code, but just because I was scrolling around your website, they do have Glencairns for Green River. So if you really enjoyed Glencairn, you can get a Glencairn.
Well, it will be on the coupon code.
It will be on the coupon code. All right.
Well, the way I program it in is the name of the item that you're purchasing needs to have a Green River in it.
Okay.
So technically, you can use it on the soda too when we have the soda in stock.
Nice.
Nice.
But yes, intended for Green River Distillery products. You can use the code BMGR for 10% off any bottle of Green River. That code shouldn't ever expire. It just won't work if an item is already on sale, and it has to be used online. So BMGR for 10% off any bottle of Green River purchased online.
And Caryn.
Sure, if it has Green River in the name, it'll work.
Oh, it says Green River Caryn glass, but spelled like actual Caryn glass. Unfortunately, Jake's marketing team wasn't smart enough to do that. So,
well, that is an actual
Well, that
Caryn.
is a-
That is
yeah, I was
not.
gonna say,
We're not
please,
purchasing
please.
Caryn.
You don't need to push my,
you need to
push my
trademark
luck
that.
there.
Get a trademark on that and charge Jake for it. That's all I want. So, awesome. So 10% off Green River products at Gold Eagle on the app.
Or the
where can
website.
Or the website.
GoldEagleWine.com.
All right. And Jake, where can people find us at? And if they want to see Caryn's passion for Green River, where can they watch us at?
So you can listen to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, or pretty much any other podcast platform. Watch us on Spotify and YouTube. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, rate, leave a comment if you enjoy Green River as well. I'll throw it to you, Caryn, to plug whatever you want to
Yeah,
plug.
where can we find you? I know you have an active Instagram.
Yeah, Glenn Caryn 1885 on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I'm trying to do better. I'm a little old school, so I try to do better. If you want to come for a tour, you can go on to greenriverwhiskey.com and you can book a tour. You can learn about our products. If you're wherever state you're in, you can go to our products, and at the bottom there's a zip code. You put in your zip code, and it'll pop up all the stores and restaurants and bars where you can find it in your area. So yeah, those would be the plugs that I'd put in for everybody.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Caryn, thank you for taking time to talk to us tonight. I know you're traveling a lot this week.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. Other than that, if you guys have not tried Green River and you're listening, you're really missing out. This is phenomenal. Probably one of the best values you'll find out there for that $35 price range. So
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Caryn,
Yep.
thank you again. Everyone, thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening. And cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Thanks.
cheers.
Cheers, everybody.